Hello, everyone. So glad to have you here with us. This podcast is designed for people who really just want to understand options for mental health treatment. We think about walking in and sitting down on the couch and just sort of launching in or talking about our mother or whatever it may be. And there are other forms of treatment that I want you to have the opportunity to know about. And we have a wonderful guest here today from Melbourne, Australia. So it is the next day there. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon here, 9 a.m. over there. So you have your coffee, I have some green tea. So for the different time of day. But let me tell you about Cathy Williams. Cathy Williams is a trailblazer in the world of body-based healing and creative arts therapy. As an award-winning author, trainer, and facilitator, Cathy is the founder of Intuitive Selves, where her workshops, courses, and one-on-one sessions help individuals connect with their intuitive wisdom. How great is that? Known for her empowering, compassionate approach, Cathy supports women to rekindle their relationship with their bodies and relearn how to listen to, trust in, and follow their intuition. Oh my goodness, that's fabulous. Cathy Williams, thank you so much for being here all the way from Australia.
Thank you so much for having me, Margot.
This is delightful. The idea of helping women rekindle their relationships with their bodies, relearn how to listen to, trust, and follow their intuition, it suggests that at one point we had it, and at some point we lost it. And so these are some ways to try to get back into connection, which I love. So, for the folks who may not be as familiar with movement therapies, because again, we all have at least seen on TV, if we haven't done it ourselves, walking into a therapist's office, you sit down, you talk, but this is different. So, can you please tell us a bit about movement therapies and how is it different from traditional talk therapy? What could someone expect, and how would they even know to look for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Movement therapy is an approach where we have what we call the somatic lens. So, we as the therapist are using the whole body for assessment and treatment. So, what that means from a client perspective is that we are constantly checking in with how does that feel in your body? Where are you holding that in your body? Because within this approach and within this framework, we have this understanding that everything that we have experienced, everything that we go through, emotions, stress, past experiences, are all stored within the body. So we use the body as a way, as a sort of a portal in, a primary pathway for this kind of exploration and healing, to know more about a situation, to learn how to safely feel our feelings and be able to regulate ourselves and support ourselves, and also to be able to do things such as reduce stress when we're feeling tension in the body. We're using the movement to move it physically out of us, to release it through somatic movements. So it's different to talk therapy because it kind of bypasses any cognitive defenses that come up, where we can often get stuck in a bit of a loop when we're talking about a particular story or a particular narrative. We can kind of get to the root of something or the root of how we're feeling about a situation through how it's showing up in the body. And I'm always very careful when explaining this because, in many circles, it's often called dance movement therapy. And that's because the pioneers that it came from used different dance techniques and creative movement prompts to be able to get people into their body more. But I use movement rather than dance because it's definitely not a performance. It's not about getting into that studio space and moving a particular way or performing in that sense, but rather actually taking a moment to check in with the body and see how your body is feeling or responding in any given time, and then using the impulses to follow those impulses and move as we want to intuitively. So there's definitely movement there, but it is not about being a dancer or looking a particular way, but rather actually integrating the body's wisdom in a really holistic sense.
Hmm, that sounds lovely. And I'm glad you made that distinction, Kathy, because I have only heard of movement therapy as dance movement therapy. We used to have someone on staff, the lovely Christy Combs, who was a dance movement therapist. And so I'm glad that it has been redefined because that does assume that someone will be dancing. And if if I'm someone looking for therapy, I'm thinking, I'm gonna go in and dance. I mean, that's not what I'm into. So if it is movement therapy, did you use the word studio? Do you do your sessions in a studio, and do movement therapists typically use a studio?
So I like to have as much space as possible. And we also have lots of different textures and supports in a physical room. So that could be from a beanbag to a really soft, squishy carpet surface. We use the walls. I do some of my sessions in person here in Melbourne, but a lot of my sessions are actually online. And
Oh,
clients seem to enjoy that more because they can participate from the comfort of their own home. They
mm,
can then, move how they feel in the safety of their space as they slowly open up and get more comfortable with that way
mm,
of being and interacting. And then they've got their own creature comforts. So they've got
mm,
their own cozy blanket or their own particular cushion. Because for me, this work is, we're using movement and we're having the body front and center, but it is really about opening a dialogue with the body. So having a really deep listening to the body to work towards understanding what our body is uniquely signaling and communicating with us. And so that
mm,
we've got a really increased awareness of what our body's doing, how we're feeling about a situation at any given time, and being able to feel more embodied rather than living solely in our head, which how I got into this work is because that's how I was living. So I'm very
mm,
familiar with that way of being and being disconnected from my body.
mm. Well, don't you think most of us are disconnected from our bodies? I mean, I hate to make those kind of generalizations, but I don't think that's at all unusual. We communicate through words, and we think that the most important thing is what we think and what we remember and how we remember it, and how we can verbalize that. But boy,
Mm,
there's this whole other acreage from, our chin on down that may not be part of the equation. It may not be part of the conversation. It's getting left out and it has its own wisdom. So I love that. So, can you describe, Kathy, what might this look like? So, let's say I'm at home
mm,
or I'm in somebody's therapy office. First of all, therapists out there, if you're going to do this, make sure you don't have a 10 by 10 office with a desk and a couch and a chair, room for people to move around. But let's say I'm doing a movement therapy session with you. What would that look like? So, I would dial in or come to see you, and how would we
yes.
begin?
So we would begin by presencing the body. So I would often get my clients to close or lower their eyes, to take out any extra stimuli
Mm,
and be able to focus on the body, on sensations, and your own inner world. I would bring their attention to their breath because that breath is that portal for regulation, it's that portal for presence. And I would invite in some somatic touch. So that is self-touch. So that could be something as simple as bringing a hand to the face or a hand to the heart or the womb space. And just, even getting into some processes where we're tapping or massaging or patting the body to wake the body up, to presence the body in the space. It'd be like, I have a body, I am here. How is my body feeling right now?
mm,
And what's really beautiful about this is it's a simple entry point to actually, we're away from our emails, we're away from responsibilities, we're just tuning in with the here and now of how we're feeling.
mm,
And a lot of the invitations when I first start working with someone is to enhance their body awareness. So, particularly if we have been disconnected from our body or if we have dissociated from our body because of a response to something traumatic, we are often numb to these particular sensations. So, bringing in our awareness to, how does that light touch feel on our skin? Can you feel the warmth there? And bringing their awareness to any other sensations that might be alive in their system and any feelings that are present, any emotions that are present. And depending on what theme we're working on or what they've brought to be explored, this could go any number of ways. So they might bring up, say, oh, I can feel a real tension in my shoulder. So then I would maybe suggest that we start with some subtle movements of that area. And, when we start to become aware of a particular body part or a particular sensation, that can be our entry point for exploring it more. So there might be, at any given time, we can be sitting on a chair and we get an impulse to adjust and be like, oh, I'm little bit uncomfortable, so I'm going to change my position. It's similar in this way when we have a sensation, it might want to move in a particular way. And then we can get, really, really fun and playful and explorative with, maybe there is a particular emotion that wants to be expressed, that wants to be released, that has something that it wants to say. If that's stored in a particular part of the body, how does that want to move in this moment? And that could be something like it just wants to shake really hard. It wants to stomp really quickly. It wants to take a really big breath out, for example. And I guess the beauty about this work is that I, as the embodied practitioner, I am tracking along with you. So I'm noticing these things as you notice them. I'm bringing in curious inquiry with how that is landing in your body and what your body's communicating and seeing what wants to be explored. But everything is at the client's pace. So you get to say yes or no to these invitations. You get to have agency over, oh, do I take inspiration from that invitation or does that feel a lot of resistance? And, I don't want to go there now. So the client really sets the pace, and we're going with what the body feels comfortable and ready for, but we're bringing that curious lens into the picture.
Mm, that sounds lovely. Right, just following that wisdom that's there. So, for somebody who has done traditional talk therapy, this probably sounds really different to them. But obviously, there's a lot of impact, and hopefully that makes sense when we talk about we're just including the acreage from the chin on down and inviting in that wisdom. And so, you as the therapist, you're not just sitting staring, but you are observing, you're watching, and maybe commenting or maybe making a suggestion of what they might do to follow that movement.
Yes. And it's definitely, from my perspective, I really encourage a non-judgmental way of viewing what's happening. But it's really building compassion as we start this dialogue with our body. And even though we don't bring in the somatic lens with movement therapy, we're still debriefing, there's still opportunity for them to say what they're experiencing and for them to bring an interpretation. So, for example, if they're working on something like stress reduction or working with the anxiety that they feel in their body, I might give suggestions for different movements that they could explore together with me in the space. And then we take a pause and be like, okay, how does your body feel now? What's the before and after? And so we're actually taking a bit of a body map, a body grab of, okay, this is where the tension was held here. this is how I released it. This process really worked for me, or this process made it worse, you know? So we're actually
Mm.
being like, oh, this process meant that I hold more tension. Okay, so what does that mean? We have to do the opposite then, you know? And we're bringing in different movements where we're playing here and exploring here in a way where they're listening to the feedback of their body.
Mm. Right. And there is a really powerful possibility in that of listening to that wisdom. And you talked about helping women rekindle their relationship with their intuition, learning how to trust, learning how to listen to themselves again. And what a wonderful way to do that, right? Because we're not just listening to our thoughts, we're not even just listening to our emotions, we're listening to all of us. And as women, boy, we are taught to not have a great relationship with our bodies often,
Yeah.
to befriend it again and to see it as a way of, it's a tool for healing and for grounding and for stress reduction and for peace. I mean, what an incredible opportunity. So, how were you trained in this? Because most of us in graduate school don't have courses on movement therapy. So, where did you get your training and how did you come to this then?
Yeah, so I actually have a long history of working in community development. So I've always worked with people. I've worked in various different developing communities overseas and within Australia in a really grassroots capacity building way. So my interest has always been with that lens of connection, connecting to ourselves and connecting to others. I did a few sort of back-to-back very heavy projects many, many moons ago, and I ended up returning to Melbourne quite burnt out and quite jaded. And I didn't have the language for it at the time, but I was invited to what essentially was a movement workshop. The woman had just done her training with the Tamalpa Institute that Anna and Daria Halpern founded, and that is somatic movement therapy based. So this facilitator was, we were welcomed into this space and we were really encouraged to feel whatever we were feeling and express it through movement. So she actually had a djembe drum in the space. So we had this really steady beat, and it was probably the first time where I was really invited and encouraged to express. And there was no judgment in the space. You could be loud, you could be rolling on the floor, you could be laughing, you could be crying. And afterwards, we were invited to capture on a piece of paper any colors, lines, and shapes. And I guess what I realized in that space was how cathartic it was to move my body in that way. And not only did I find it a great release, but I found it, very grounding and very connecting.
Mm.
So I went up to her afterwards and I was like, what is this? And I was so fascinated with it. So I went in search of movement therapy, somatic movement therapies. I was lucky enough to be able to enroll in different courses that, as you know, when we study something, we are the student of it. So every process we are experiencing ourselves. There was so many different parts of my life that I got to explore through the body and through movement, through different mentorships with people in this field. And then I also started studying expressive art therapy.
Mm.
So I guess what I found along the way was that I still wanted to work with people, but I wanted to do it in a way that was sustainable for me. So, me studying movement and then expressive art therapy, I was able to not only develop practices for my own healing and my own rejuvenation in this space, but then also have these modalities where I could bring them into my community programs. I could
Mm.
bring them into, you know, team building activities between people to, icebreakers to get to know each other. I could
Mhm.
bring them into spaces therapeutically where we could explore what emotion was happening for someone. It's been a really wild journey where there's so many places we can take this because it is so creative.
Mm. That's wonderful. And so you mentioned expressive art therapy.
Yes,
So that's something that's separate from movement therapy, is that right?
I combine the two,
You
but they
do.
are different forms of working with the body. So
Okay.
therapy uses the visual expression, so drawing, painting, clay work, collage, anything that is a way of expressing something from the inner world and from the inner landscape. Again, it's not about having, being an artist or having all these amazing artistic skills. I call it, functional meditation, where in this process of where our thoughts and stories don't have to come out verbally, but they can come out in what we're doing with our hands or our body. And it's been amazing for not only being able to express things within that we don't have words for yet, but also to make meaning of what comes out onto the page or in our creations.
Mm.
And, sometimes it is really just about the process of getting something out onto the paper or whatever medium we're using. But then there's also opportunity to get curious about what does come out on the paper. And, I've also been able to use that as an inquiry space. So, is there anything there on the page that stands out? Again, that curious inquiry. And it's amazing what clients, what comes out of the psyche, whether it's a visual symbol of strength that they then use whenever they're feeling a bit disempowered. It could be something that is a support for them. It could be, something that they want to burn and release. Like it can go in many different ways.
Mm. And to your point, nobody has to be a great artist. I mean,
Yes,
that's really not the point. Just like we don't have to be a dancer, we don't have to be an artist. It's a form of expression. And people who are trained in this, there is no judgment. It's not like they're an art critic or a dance critic. They're
absolutely.
just, right, just there to kind of be their support, be curious, and ask the person who's doing the movement or the art to be curious too. So, what would you say are some misconceptions that folks might have about these modalities? Because again, we have three art therapists currently at our therapy practice. It's incredible. I see some of the work up in the hallway. Sometimes that's usually kids, and somebody asks, that's always permission. Can we put this up? Or the kid says, will you put this up somewhere? But it can be a wonderful modality for teenagers, for adults. So what are some things that folks might get wrong when they think about
Mm.
these kinds of expressive therapies?
So I guess the one that we've already said is that, they don't have to be a dancer, they don't have to be an artist. It's not about skill, it's about expression and being curious and exploring. One that I often get, but maybe, I've been doing this for many years now, and it has changed over the years, but I guess it's still seen as woo-woo. It's seen as too alternative. And to that, I say that, these modalities they have been around for a very long time and they're grounded in psychology and neuroscience and very much a trauma-informed practice. And we all have bodies, we walk around with these bodies. And it's really just about being more aware and being open to what our own wisdom has to share. Another misconception is that they have to perform, or, in terms of art therapy, that it has to look a certain way. So everything actually happens in a really safe, therapeutic, intentional way. And it's for the client. Everything is for the client and for the client's benefit.
Mm.
I guess another one that that it often people place movement therapy or art therapy with only being for children. And when I first started my practice, I worked with kindergarten and primary school age children, and it's a wonderful way in to work with them that, it's not threatening, it's very playful, it uses the imagination. But my whole practice now is designed around supporting women because we can
Mm.
deeply benefit from this. Not only does it, yes, connect us with our inner child and back to that playful, imaginative joy space, but it's also about, finding the deeper meaning and experience and feeling safe enough to be able to process what we've experienced in life as well. And I guess another one that I often get is, and this is usually from blokes that I'll meet at a conference or whatever, and it's like, oh, so what, you just get in a room and you just dance? And it's always so funny because it can, like, yes, there are moments where, the movement or the expression might look really chaotic and really expressive outwardly. But the way that these sessions are run and the way that these workshops are designed are very intentional. There's a really soft entry. Maybe we'll explore different themes, but it's very structured in terms of my holding of this exploration. And it's tailored to the client. So again, they have agency of how deep or light we explore something. And there's always integration at the end. So I'm really big on, and as you read in my bio, it is about reconnecting people back to their own system as a compass, as their own internal resources. So I really encourage different exploration of home practices in our day-to-day life. We don't need week-long retreats where we do all of this and then we don't know how to integrate it into our daily life, but rather
Mm.
we're learning how to pepper them into how we start the day, in between work sessions, how we end the day, and how to, I guess, connect with ourselves deeper so we've got a really strong sense of self.
Mm. Boy, which I think especially right now, we need that connection to ourselves. There's so much that feels chaotic in the world. We need to be able to hold on to ourselves. I love that.
Absolutely.
So, how can these therapies complement something like a talk therapy, which is again what people might be most familiar with? So, can people do both? Can they switch back and forth?
Absolutely. So I feel like they complement each other. When we feel regulated, when we feel safe, we're able to go to deeper places within. And when we've got practices where we can support and anchor ourselves through difficult times, then we're able to speak to that. We're able to give expression to that. So I believe that in the last couple of years, I've started running professional development training for different practitioners, whether they're social workers, counselors, people who work with clients and groups. And they're often very curious about body-based healing and using different expressive and movement therapy in the space, not only for them as practitioners who are holding that space, but to weave this in with clients. So there's so many ways to start to introduce this lens into our
Mm.
practice and to be able to support our clients to feel a bit more grounded, a bit more regulated, to release tension as it comes up when we're talking about something in particular, to feel supported and grounded when we might be caught in a loop or when we might have a really big emotional response with something that's uncomfortable. And also to just to feel really a sense of vitality as we're feeling strong in ourself again and reclaiming parts of ourself as we move through the therapeutic practice.
Mm. It's a lovely description. I can see these going together seamlessly. And for folks who have done talk therapy and have felt like, I kind of got what I can get from that. Sometimes adding something else in, sprinkling something else in can be incredibly powerful. Oh, I think we have a little connectivity issue. There we go. I think sprinkling something like this in can be incredibly powerful, or weaving back and forth. So having a practitioner can do some talk work, but also can do some expressive work. What a great combination. Well, Cathy Williams, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today. And you've done a beautiful job of describing something that I think can be hard to capture in words because this is about an experience. So thank you for
Mm.
doing that. So if people want to get in touch with you, we'll have it in the show notes, but what's the best way for them to connect?
Thank you so much for having me, Margot. It's so nice to be able to share this work and get it out there in the world a bit more. My business is called Intuitive Self, so people can connect via my website, intuitiveself.com.au, because I'm based in Australia. But I
Mhm.
run most of my offerings online. So I really welcome people if they have been curious about what I've been exploring. I've got many free resources available for people to try out. My book is also available that has over 20 invitations for people to bring in this body-based healing and creative self-discovery. It's called Body Wisdom, A Guide to Connecting with Your Intuitive Self. And
Lovely.
yeah, and I offer online PD workshops for practitioners. And if there's anyone out there who is interested for their own therapy sessions, they can jump on a 1 hour free discovery session and see what they like from the experience.
Hmm. Folks, I highly encourage you to do that. Cathy is delightful. I think you would definitely get a really good flavor for what this is about. Well, Cathy Williams, thank you so very much for sharing your time, your energy, your wisdom, your morning coffee with us. Much appreciated. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Always lovely to have you here. We hope to have you next time. No, of course, we hope to have you next time. We look forward to having you next time. Be well.